Hello. Today we're here to talk about MCP, Model Context Protocol. If somehow you've been living under a bunker, a nuclear one, and have not heard the buzz about it, no worries. We'll also discuss what it is and why it's something you should definitely care about. And I'm absolutely ecstatic to have here with me to discuss this topic, Eran Broder, who I've known for many years as one of the people that has been absolutely most enthusiastic about Gen AI in general. So I'm really excited to be talking about this topic with him, of all people. Eran, do you want to maybe briefly introduce yourself?
Um, you did a good job. I think
Yeah.
like ever since I got into Gen AI, like I just forgot my career, maybe even my personality a bit. And just a funny anecdote, I think like when we first started talking about it, I was so lonely. Uh, and it's really nice that finally like I have people to talk to, and I'm not that crazy dude that's going around grabbing CTOs, COs at dinners. Come inside. I have to talk to you about agents. Like, what do you want? Like, dude, I don't know you. So finally, like, okay, I'm not crazy. And then my wife knows I wasn't crazy. It just took a bit of time. So,
So
yeah,
this is
that's it.
all true. And for the benefits of our listeners, I met Eran when he was indeed this lonely pariah, this kind of homeless person at the street corner talking about the apocalypse. That was Eran talking about AI, and he was trying to convince me and many others way before kind of this wave hit us that this is a game changer and what he has kind of seen that it can do. And so far, he's been extremely accurate in that kind of the world followed where he was pointing. So yeah, definitely the right person to discuss this
So
topic.
I'm happy that I can just tell my wife told you. That's it. That's my win.
For
I don't need
once.
anything else. For once, yeah,
It's the one time
once,
you get one
one
time you get
time.
to do it. So just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Ronnie. My background is in development, managing, and kind of hands-on roles in development teams. I'm extremely passionate about processes in general and how they affect how we develop, just because I was kind of lucky enough to have participated in a lot of these transformations when we moved to Agile, when we moved to continuous deployment, when we moved to testing and infrastructure and code, and a lot of these other things. And I have to say, this last change is probably the biggest that I've witnessed so far in the 25 years of my career. Um, and I'm also developing an observability product called the Digma, which has some relationship to AI, which is why I'm absolutely kind of also professionally very interested in the topic. So let's start. And so far we've been throwing this acronym around, and up until to be honest, up until maybe 2 months ago, I was not very kind of aware of what exactly MCPs are. I've seen them being mentioned in some Twitter groups and things like that. So maybe we can start by just explaining what is this technology or this word that came into our lives, and what is the significance of it?
Um, I'll approach it maybe without that much enthusiasm, or maybe I'll try to distill it. So let's start with what it is. So it's a protocol that Anthropic came up with, that basically allows your, let's call it agent, maybe we'll elaborate on that term later, but allows your agent to interact with tools that are hosted somewhere else, maybe on your local machine, maybe on some server. Um, I like to envision it like there's the original Ninja Turtles cartoon, and I think in season one there was like a Krang that it was just a brain,
Mm-hmm.
So that's Claude without MCP. It's a brain. It's a brilliant brain. You can talk to it. It gives Shredder advices,
Claude
and
or Gemini or whatever being the model
yeah,
in the
I'm
story.
giving I'm giving the the respect to Anthropic because they came up with it. So
Okay.
let's give them the PR. Yeah, but it's relevant for all the LLMs. So basically, okay, so that's that. Then you have another level which people maybe who are not as technical are not aware of, which is tool calls. I think it was introduced first, if I recall, by OpenAI, maybe same time. I encountered it with OpenAI. Many people, even before it was an official protocol, including myself when I worked in data rails, we had our own protocol, never mind. But basically, instead of just talking and conversing with the LLM, when we ask a question, it gives us back an answer. Most of us today know that you can ask him to do stuff like generate an image,
Mhm.
calculate something, and you'll see different flow. And this was called tool calls. Thing is, it was a simple protocol. When you ask something, the LLM, and you also provide a list of here's the stuff you can do it by telling you to do it. So MCP is like the evolution that brings it all together and makes this product protocol standalone, very accessible to maybe less technical people who do not work with the API and do not want to code, and also takes it to the cloud, meaning you don't have to host your tools on the same device that runs the LLM and get the tool call. The agent can ask some remote machine to do that. And
Nope.
what basically, if we're going back to the crane analogy, so in season two, suddenly you had a body. So now the
Mhm.
brain can work. If an FTP server is Jira, if it's a Gmail, like set an
So I'm
appointment.
I'm 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 going to take this very minimalistic and modest
Okay.
explanation, uh, and I'm going to say that on the surface of it, this is a very small step. Yeah, like I'm sure technically also in implementation wise, it's
Yeah,
a
it's a
very
didn't.
small step.
Yeah, it's a
But
standard. It's not even a technology. It's
yeah,
just a
it's
standard.
a small step. It's not something that was unheard of
Totally.
before. I know there were like GPTs and things like that that people could write themselves. I don't know if they're equivalent, but they definitely were able to do similar things. Like you had different permutations that were able to kind of work with different APIs. Could be I'm wrong. Um, but I do think that it's a giant leap. And this is where I have to share with you. And, I think we've switched roles.
Yeah.
Back then, when we started talking, you were the prophet, the pariah, talking about the apocalypse in a good way, like the the apocalypse in a good way. Is there like a positive term for the apocalypse, like
The utopia.
the utopia, the
The
upcoming
utopia that's approaching.
utopia?
Yeah.
And we've switched roles because with MCPs, suddenly, my brain slightly exploded when I started grasping the ramifications of it. So what you described technically is correct. If we want to know what an MCP is, it's just communication layer, if I were to put it like that, between the agent and whatever other tools need to be accessible to it. And my kind of limited imagination circa last year would have said, okay, so now I can ask the agent to order me some tickets to Hawaii, and it would be able to use some APIs to do that. No big deal. But we have come a long way, and also in the usage of how we've kind of integrated the agent into our processes. That part has evolved as well. So now engineering teams, if we're talking about them, are much more kind of expanding the limits of what they can do with agents for code reviews, for testing, for writing code, for testing code, for writing documentation, for doing a lot of things and beyond. Kind of, I've seen entire cycles end to end kind of automated where the agent would write a code, then it would write a test, and it would execute a test, then they would fail, then it would fix it. This is something that I've been doing a lot lately, and it's amazing. And suddenly, it's not just about, okay, I'm going to use Cursor for that, I'm going to use VS Code, I'm going to use Copilot or whatnot. There is an ecosystem because MCPs mean that the data available to the agent, data and actions available to the agent as it's going through that reasoning process of what it needs to do to accomplish the task becomes open for other products to extend the data and actions available to it. So to give, and I'll start from kind of the end, the example that blew my mind. Okay, so I I'm working on an observability tool. And typically, when working on observability tools, we would say, okay, what is the user interface that we want to create? Maybe it would be an API, maybe a CLI, maybe it would be a piece of GUI. And we would try to estimate like what is the use case that the users would seek best to use our product to fulfill, and basically try to implement that to the best of our ability. And we would get it right to some extent by generalizing that the use case. Because individual needs are unique, right? Sometimes I want a very specific thing that might not be in the generalized use case, but somehow we can work with that.
Yeah, or either you put the effort and create some, some dashboard or some advanced settings where you basically throw all the responsibility on the user and okay, take it from here, create your own. Yeah,
Mhm.
these are the two spectrums. Agreed. Yeah,
Exactly.
continue.
So what happens is that users are kind of, or the burden of using our UI and dashboard and the way that we decided to make that data accessible and making that work for them, all of that processing falls on the users. And also, it often falls on them in a very manual way. And let's take an example maybe that we discussed before. Let's say I want to review my code. And let's say observability might be relevant for that. So it falls on me to now go and check dashboards, check the PR, check the
Elaborate on the term observability just for the context. Like when you say, okay, I'm doing a
perfect. Yeah. So observability meaning information that we can learn about what happens when our application runs.
okay.
Okay, and that information today, and this is kind of the domain. I'm sorry for dragging us into this specific domain. It's just the one that my head is full of, usually 24/7, which is logs, traces, metrics, everything that would give us indications about what's happening with my code in runtime after I actually deploy it and run it. And this could be in pre-production environments or production environments. So the information about what happens there is amazingly useful, but to access it would require a lot of manual steps. And as a result, what would happen usually is that people would not do it. So basically, if I'm writing a code review and I now need to interrogate logs, traces, metrics, check dashboards, look at history, try to see if something is anomalous or maybe, yeah, this is always the behavior after before the cache has started kind of kicking in, things would be a little bit slower, and all of that thing kind of consideration fall in on the user to kind of try to make sense of it. And that is kind of the natural way of things because you can only make the data accessible in certain ways, and you cannot kind of predict what type of information the user would want and in which context. More important than that.
And even if you could, there's still it's not only the manual resources and the time, there's the mental burden. We're still humans. Like there's also the human factor. How much effort and
Exactly.
concentration do I put into it? What time is it of the day? Like, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. Let's just push it and continue.
Exactly. And even more than that, the answer does not lie just in the observability space. So there are numerous
Mhm.
kind of domains that are overlapping. Some of it is the code. Some of it is GitHub and the code history and source control and which files were modified. And another is Jira. Maybe there are some tickets that are related to this issue that's already known. Another could be ground cover and maybe some Kubernetes management tools that could tell me there is a problem right now that's unrelated in the
By
infra.
the way, when you're describing it, even listening, like that's not the day to day. Like this is a crisis. If you have to go through all that, you know what I mean? Like
It's it's
we as human, we cannot take that all in. You
exactly it's
would
kind
probably do a
and
step. You'll take care. You will limit yourself into the context that you're mentally capable of digesting. By the way, might be enough. And when we say enough, we're not kind of being philosophical here. Maybe it's enough for the day or the week. Like, good job. Maybe even your peer or your supervisor will say, "Yeah, you did a good job." But none of us had the full picture.
so what we're describing essentially is the need to synthesize a lot of different data sources, to reason about how to synthesize with them. Let's say if you want to get to a root cause or to understand if something is significant or not, and to apply them in order to create to fix something. In this case, the scenario is actually the pull request and reviewing it. So we have all of these things come together, and as a result of what you mentioned, people will not do them unless forced by some kind of calamity. So
Yeah.
production is down. Okay, now everybody stop what you're doing and do every step that I just described. But we would never have the time to do it or the kind of mental capacity to do it with all
Mm.
of our ongoing tasks, and sometimes expertise to do it correctly without having other folks in the team join in and triage on it and understand what all of these sources are actually telling us. And that, to me, describes, it's kind of like a case study example of the limitations of a human-centric application, as I call it. Meaning, I have, or tools, let's say for observability, it would be APMs, have created interfaces.
What's an APM?
APM is an application monitoring.
Okay, okay, okay.
So there, there are all sorts of different tools that were created to help engineers, to help DevOps, to help SREs to accomplish these things. And being human facing, they work around these limitations. So when you create a tool, you know that to some degree you will have you will hit these limits where it would require people to work with your tool, to use generic data to solve specific use cases, and the burden would fall on the user. And going back to why I think MCPs change things completely is because suddenly we have the potential to create something that is not human centric, but is agent centric. Meaning, my role as a product manager is now not to think about what would be the best UI that the user would be able to use that only has my specific data, right? I don't have access to all of the other data sources and tools that the user is using. And I need to somehow make a complete mapping between the user's requirement and the feature set and make that work, kind of square the circle here and make it as easy to use as possible. Because now suddenly we have this other player in the room, the agent. And the agent is able to reason and decide to automate a lot of these processes and also to include numerous data sources. And my absolute mind-blowing moment of this year was when I was asking my agent, and I was using Cursor at the time, and I was
Okay.
asking, please help me review my code changes. And this was after I've been experimenting with our implementation of an MCP. And it basically started doing these steps. It says, okay, let me check in the CI and staging environment if there are any new issues related to the code changes
Mm.
that you have just entered. And then it proceeded to check, or first of all, it used Git to actually understand what the changes are. Um, Afterwards, it started looking at possible fixes. So the whole workflow has become completely automated. And this is as far away or far removed from my original concept of, yeah, I'm going to use this to order tickets to
Yeah.
Hawaii as possible, because suddenly the user specifies the need, but how to answer that needs falls on the agent. And now the agent has available to it a lot of different data sources and a lot of different actions to perform. And suddenly, the role of the application is not over the product management team is not necessarily to create kind of interfaces that try to generalize a use case, but rather it becomes a provider of expertise data towards the agent and of actions towards the agent to allow it to decide how to fulfill the use case, each unique use case to the best of its abilities.
Just want to go back to a word you said, uh, and you said automate, which is a complicated word in this. Like the word automate needs some we need to break it down. And another thing, yeah, like same as websites, that your website is facing the user, but it's also facing the web crawlers. And one can ask, okay, I have my API and product, like I'm Git, I am a search engine. I need to measure who is using me more, agents or humans. And if it's will become 90% agents,
Mhm.
these are your clients, these are your customers. Like, you have to be accessible to them. But I want to go back to automate, and let's put a damp in that utopia. um, there's this tension between the word automate and autonomy. Because what you did now is you described not an automated process. There's not even a process here. You described an entity, we call it an agent. You
Mhm.
gave it the autonomy to do stuff. And maybe I'll give you a nice example, but a good example, and then we'll go to a bad example. Um, I think, first mind-blowing event when I was back in Austin, when we talked about this stuff, and you ignored me. No, I'm kidding. Um, uh, was I had like an 8K token window, and I was working on programming agents, and the code exceeded the 8K, and I didn't know what to do. So then, like, I had this eureka moment. Oh, I'll add another programmer and let them talk to each other. Back then, like, today we call it multi-agent, but I just said, okay, I have two entities. Let them talk together, and then I added another one. And when I added a manager, which I talked to the manager, I gave it the tasks, and he outsourced it to the programmers. Suddenly, he was bored. Meaning, if before I used to talk to an agent, its context window was filled with code and problems and fixing errors. Suddenly you have this manager that just sends an email to these agents. And when they came back and said, we're done, suddenly something happened. He went back and said, okay, now, as you said, write some tests. And I remember that moment because I didn't ask for that. So this wasn't an automated process of writing code. I have an autonomous entity here, which maybe we'll discuss maybe some other time, how you can corrupt these entities.
Mhm.
Um, so going back to your example, there are also new problems here, because once this process is autonomous and once you take into account the randomness of the LLMs themselves, which is baked into the cake. You can play with the temperature, but still, and the randomness of the input, even the time of day can affect it. You can ask, do this, get one result. You can revert, ask the exact same question a minute later, you'll get a different result. So when we say automate, that word has it's a nice word. The process is automated. We take out the human factor. We love automation. Why? Because there is no fatigue, there's no randomness. But when we go the autonomous way, we bring back the human factor, which is baked into the LLMs. And that's something that I
So
don't even know how do I
I
approach it,
propose
but it's there.
I propose
And
the word automation, or
automation, I like it.
which basically,
Automation. Okay,
but
okay.
you're hitting a good point here, which is that basically nobody sat down and said, this is going to be the process. Nobody said to the agent, and it is possible, by the way. At some point, I told the agent, you know what? Every time I ask you to review the code, I want you to do this because I wanted to cement that behavior. But nobody went and a priori kind of said, declared to the agent, whenever you are going through this process, always do only these steps and that's it.
I won't even trust the prompt. Maybe you're referring to something that's like what it's called
But,
agent workflow,
uh-huh.
where okay, like each step is very confined. The set of going back to the MCP, like okay, step one, you have access only to these tools. By the way, it becomes more and more like you manage human beings.
And
You human society has not evolved to omnipotent individuals, one-man show. No, we specialize. Even our human body, even our body, we all start, all our cells, well, with some exceptions, have the same DNA, but then they are specialized, and the DNA that is irrelevant
mhm.
is tightly packed, and listen, you have nothing to do here. By the way, that's cancer. When something goes wrong, suddenly that. So same thing here. So I just wanted to pause on that word automate, and yeah, what's the new word? The
Automate.
autonomous automate. So yeah, automate.
Yeah, for sure. And think about that for a second, and let me blow your mind a little more. Because let's say all I do in my organization is say, okay, remember the agents that we have right now that you guys are using to generate code, look at your functions, whatever. I'm going to now add a new MCP for, let's say, Jira. And I didn't do anything else. I didn't say, hey, agent, now you need to do this and that. And all of a sudden, this guy is saying, hey, what should I know? I want to modify this function. What should I watch out for? And suddenly he gets back a list of known problems or of complaints that they've been having around that function just because the agent decided it was pertinent to the specific work he's doing. Now, this and this is one use case, right? The same information would suddenly appear when I'm using that when I'm writing a test, and it would suggest, hey, I'm going to try to replicate this issue in my test generation, and it's going to kind of propagate all across because the information will lend itself to the agent that can now make the decision of when it would be useful to use it in order to kind of meet the requirement of the need that was kind of put forth by the end user. And this to me is a complete inversion of how, and I'm saying that as somebody who kind of flirted with being a product manager, this is a complete inversion of how application development works. Because from being needing to anticipate the human need and provide a solution, we are now providing the building blocks and expertise that an agent would be able to orchestrate and synthesize with other data in order to answer not one need, but a million different specialized needs. And this is where I was saying, and I'm leaving right now my domain, which is observability, behind. This is kind of the absolute, I know people talked and it kind of became a cliche about the death of SaaS and whatnot. I don't know if it's a death. I don't know if it is a revolution, but this fundamentally changes my paradigm as a product developer, because suddenly I need to do something else.
Agreed.
The processes of, hey, let's
Agreed.
do a use case as a user. I want to a lot of these things that we wanted to do are
Agreed.
suddenly irrelevant, and we need to think about how our specialization fits with what the agent can do.
I want to take it even a step further. It's not a curse, but I'll use that word. I had a LinkedIn post. I say yeah, begone the age of SaaS, welcome the age of ass, agent as a service. And I did a nice example where let me give you maybe a twist on MCP server, because I've can even use the term for years now. I've been using LLMs with the outside ecosystem.
Mhm.
Because again, basically, what's an MCP server? It's just some kind of RPC, which we've been doing for like forever. So you can make your own MCP server. You want to talk to Jira? Okay, it's just a function. There's just an API. But what I've been doing for a while was just give my agents access to my computer. There was a while I stopped with that. I even allowed them to install new npm packages. And talk about autonomy, when I give an agent a task, he just goes and downloads the packages needed and just builds its own tools. Even if there is no MCP server, when I did some games with I just uploaded some video how I show like how my agent uses Monday and transform and migrates from Zendesk to Monday. There was no MCP server. No one gave me an MCP
I think
server.
I think you're right, but this is one of
Uh,
these situations when it's not a technological step.
yeah, no, it's a
It,
conceptual breakthrough, but I know that was just me addressing the technical side. But now going back to the point where I'm at now, is I don't even know where the value lies. Meaning, when you say a product, when you say Jira,
yeah.
Monday, Salesforce, like big
Mhm.
SaaS companies, we take it as a unit of value that has the database, the user experience, the security. And as you said, it's all human centric. But if the agent is orchestrating it now, and suddenly maybe we're even used to, wait, why do I need to click? I just want to tell you, I don't want to browse through, I don't want to browse through charts. I don't want to read. People becoming lazy. I don't want to read this. Summarize it. I don't want to click. I want to tell you. Even like I want to speak. I don't even want to type.
Yeah.
Okay, so the UI layer is okay. That's a problem. And now the whole structuring of data, again, human centric. But if the agent can do the query and another query and another query and observe the data and perform mathematical analysis like you guys do with your telemetries and your observability tools. Uh, so wait, I don't need to have a function that calculates the mean value
That-
or the average value. So I'm at the point that I'm like, okay, so what am I giving? Like computation? I'm giving a CPU.
that's a great
I'm digesting the data.
that's a great point.
I'm just saving. I'm saving my client. Maybe if I do a good job, the agent doesn't have to do many requests, because, as you said, I gave you the right tools, the right API, and I'm saving you, instead of doing it in 6 shots, which you pay as the user because it's your agent and it's your tokens. I know what you need, and you can do it in one shot. So I'm at six of the price. So it's
You're
not
right.
like
And
it's
I
even
think
more. I'm not trying to be dystopian. I love what's
No,
going
but I
on,
think this begs
but
the question about how to create uh, applications for agents. And the other question is, where does the boundary lie between what the agent can do and what my application can do that the agent cannot do? So
what do you mean?
let's put some let's
Okay.
put
Yeah,
some
give an example.
yeah, let's put some assumptions into the mix. Um, Agents, while being extremely intelligent, have limitations. They cannot instantly replace every product in existence by on-demand access to raw data. Okay, they are not able to do that yet, meaning that if I have this massive data set that I'm accumulating over time, and now I'm telling the agent, hey, go do this extremely difficult task. To some extent, it might do some shortcuts, like maybe look at the graph and look at it more like a human does, and maybe more heuristically get to conclusions. But it will, in terms of what it's able to do, it will not be able to replace every expertise of every application and also do it on demand without any background processing prior to being assigned that task. Do you agree with that assumption?
I agree, but it's like temporary. Like I don't want to take a concrete example, or maybe we should and break it down because when you say I completely agree, but it's just because it's not built yet. Meaning, give me access. Like the application blew up. All I have left is the database. Um, so I can't. It won't be easy, but if the agent is running and it has the ability, which is not something new, like that's the whole buzz, the agent can vibe code for itself and generate artifacts that encapsulate the logic that it created suddenly. And because today, there, because it's so complicated, I haven't encountered a decent, persistent agent. That's something that I don't like the word passionate because it's tossed around too much, but I will use that word. I'm really passionate about. Can I create an agent that will run forever, like a human or like a pet?
Yeah,
There's a parrot, there's a dog. It
or
has its
or a million of them.
yeah,
But
or a million
yeah,
of them. But let's focus about on the one. So I
yeah,
agree with you, but not on the like philosophical level, but maybe there's a that the next level is it's an evolution.
oh,
So
for sure.
now, like you were looking at a fish. Can it walk on land? Of course not. Can it breathe? No, of course not. But wait, give it time to evolve. Give it time to generate its own organs it needs to adapt to that and allow it to have memory like we have in our genes. So I agree. And again, profits, I don't know, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 6 months. But we can go back to I just wanted to disagree for the sake of being true to the philosophical nature of this discussion. I
At
don't
some
want to
point, it
disagree,
is
but
possible.
I agree that
Yeah.
currently the focus should be okay. These agents are at the work. These and they deserve our attention. They deserve it, and they cannot do it without us. They're running on extremely pricey CPUs. It's idiotic. It's like saying that our whole body will be based just on our brain and there won't be any reflexes. No, we have reflexes. You don't have to bother the brain whenever you have to scratch. You don't go to the brain when you touch something hot. Listen, LLM, I'm touching a stove. This is extremely hot. What should I do? Processing, processing, processing. No, when we touch something that's extremely hot, we just go, and that's it, and that's why we're alive. So that's my analogy to that, like CPU GPU agent. That's my analogy for where we're at. All I'm saying is that in the future it will create its own reflexes. That's
Absolutely. I'm being more of an engineer than a philosopher. I'm looking more towards, let's say, 100 feet ahead and
oh,
not a mile ahead yet.
okay.
And when I look
Agreed.
ahead, what I'm seeing is that we haven't reached that omega point where agents can become any app that is currently being implemented and do it
Agreed.
well. That the
Agreed.
agent can become both a Monday and a Datadog and a um, um, Sneak and everything on demand all the time. Uh,
Agreed.
because right now, we have kind of raw data, which is a little bit too much for our agents to handle on demand, historically, in retrospect, to be able to get to conclusions without that intermediate step. And that intermediate step is called my applications expertise.
Agreed. Agreed. And it's not
And
only the data, it's the code that gives data its meaning. If we go back like to the biological meaning, like the a DNA strand by itself, it's meaningless. Like, okay, if some alien finds a DNA strand floating around, what is this? Okay, there's some patterns. It's lovely. Look how it's folded. But where is the code? Where are the ribosomes that turn that DNA to RNA and create proteins without that CPU that converts that data into something that's valuable to humans. So it's not only the raw data, it's the huge code base that brings this data to life and gives it meaning and value to a human being.
exactly. And what I have seen, and this kind of touches back on the question of, okay, so you want to build an application for agents. Now, what is the right way to do it? And I will start with, and again, I'm only talking about the technology of today. I know you might be way ahead of me in terms of looking at the ramifications of where the changes are taking us. But when I look at today's agent ecosystem, and when I say today, maybe next year, maybe a little bit beyond that, what I see is that there are many kind of different applications that saw this and decided, yeah, we're going to offer access to the agent to our data. But if there's a right way to write agent-centric applications, they kind of did it the wrong way. And
Give an example.
so there are
What's a wrong way?
there are two examples that I saw. And I think I kind of look right now at the data that they make accessible to the agent, not the actions. And when we look at the data, it can either be too raw, meaning that the data is unprocessed.
Hmm.
It's huge in terms of the size of the data that needs to be processed because it's kind of like I give you access to the ocean, an ocean of data, very granular. And now the agent is not that capable to kind of navigate through all of that data just like that and make very tough calculations. As an anecdote, my daughter is right now going through high school, and she has just reached the limit of what the GPTs and the Claudes can do for her. She said, "Okay, before it was great in explaining the solutions to my math problems.
Hmm.
Right now, I'm doing 3D algebra and it stopped. It's just making up nonsense. And
Yeah.
this very limitation is what you hit at a certain point of time when you require a specific level of data processing, if you just give it access to the raw data. So that's one mistake that I've seen made. And then I'll let you comment, but the other kind of mistake that I've seen made is in the kind of other end, where the data is too processed. And what do I mean by that? That
Hmm.
I would give it a very specific alert dashboard that doesn't have the contextuality. It doesn't tell me more about the problem, except let's take an extreme example. The build color is red. Okay, and there is not enough hook in it to understand more. Um, the AI is not able to query and contextualize it and synthesize it with other data sources. So it's not saying these are the files that are a change or that fail. These are the tests. This is the link that we have between the tests and, let's say, the observability data or whatnot, or this is a link to the time that this happened so that you can check other things that happened in that time. The data is just dumping kind of the UI content on you and kind of falling into the same, kind of making the data a little bit too much hardened in terms of where it is in the process. And I'm going to suggest that the best way to actually create an agent-centric application is to pre-process the data to some extent with your application expertise, but maintain contextuality, maintain kind of a high degree of linkage that would allow then the agent to decide to get more information about specific areas, to query other data sources using references like, I don't know, commit hashes or other things that you can keep and provide, and kind of leave the ground open for the Gen AI to then shine by looking at all of this pre-processed data and get to higher level conclusions about what it needs to do.
I agree if you're talking about the simple agents that exists today. And again, it's more of like, because I've been doing it for so long, it's became more of like asking your grandmother a recipe for her, some famous salad or some meatballs. I just go with the taste. So the reason I agree, but what I ask myself, I never talked about it out loud, so I'm looking for the words. It's like, my rule of thumb is, if what would a human do? If it's fair to a human, it's fair to the AI, let's specifically the LLM. If it's not fair to the human, it might still be fair to the LLM because it has more capabilities, which I'll elaborate in a moment. But going back to your example, if I, and by the way, that is something real, like you work with code, and sometimes you work with a REPL, did some Python, some whatever, and you accidentally evaluate a variable that's huge. Never was supposed to, you were never supposed to type its name and press enter. Your computer freezes for a moment. The CPU rises. You exceeded the buffer of your console, your terminal. What would it like? Of course, it will overwhelm an LLM, and it will also overwhelm a human being. Like dump on me a huge 10,000 file JSON. I can't comprehend it. Question is, what do you do then? What do you do as a human? And are you giving your agent the ability to take a step back and do that? And there's a real good example. Like if you copy text, huge text into, let's say, GPT, it will say, no, you've exceeded the limits. But if you drag a big CSV Excel file, it attacks it completely different. Drag the biggest Excel file you can find, as long as you don't exceed the size limit of just the file upload. The GPT agent, and it is an agent, I can talk about it in a moment, but will say, okay, I have an Excel file here. There's no reason whatsoever for me to read this entire thing. What I'll do first is I'll poke around. How many rows? Okay, let's peek at the first row. I can do with that. Okay, I got a sense of it. And you will see a process unfolding in front of your eyes. And again, no tech, just go to GPT, Claude does the same, because Claude has its analysis tool, CSV tool. I don't remember how they call it. So
I think
there's more room. There's more room. But again, uh, when we say agent, that's why I said agent as a service. Cursor doesn't have that tool unless you give Cursor. If Cursor will call an MCP server, that will overwhelm it with data. There's a problem. There's even a financial problem here. Like,
but I think that this analogy is very valid. So if the Excel file is the raw data, and yeah, if you dump
yeah,
your raw data onto your agent, then it will probably not be effective. The accessing the file, getting the first row, second row, maybe
okay.
most recent row, those are APIs that
Oh, okay. You know
give
what? Agreed.
that
Okay.
are a
Now I
little
get your
bit
point.
more
Now I get your point.
pre-processed. And this is where
I
we
get your point.
and I agree with you that it's not one API. It's not like one piece of data. Now I can get it raw, I can get it hard, or I can get it in the middle. It's more like when I say pre-processed, what I mean is that, yeah, I've done some job and I'm giving you access. I'm giving the agent access to be able to look up. And when I say too hard, I mean I only tell you the conclusion, but I don't give you access to query it. Okay, imagine the
Agreed.
Excel file.
But you would treat a programmer the same way. What I'm saying is,
Let me give you another example.
okay,
Okay, let's say I have the biggest book in world history. Okay, in the universe. Okay, it's
okay,
an amazingly long book, trillions of rows of data, and I want a summary of it. Okay, so one way is to say to the agent, um, here's a book, and here's an API to get the summary of the book. That both of these don't help me much in this scenario. Why? Because if I tell it, here's the book, it's a lot of raw data and it doesn't have access. I don't give it API, get row A, get row B. It can just access it as one bulk. And that would be hard for it to dismantle. On the other hand, if I were to tell it, here's the summary for the book, okay? And this is also a mistake that I've seen products make.
agreed.
I've just taken away its autonomy instead of giving it tools by which to exercise its
So
autonomy.
elaborate on tools like get chapter one,
Exactly,
get
exactly,
chapter two.
or even if my expertise, let's say I'm an expert, my product expertise is in detecting, I don't know, styles of writing. Okay.
Okay.
That's my product expertise, and I have some sources that maybe the agent doesn't have available to it. I've spent years on private sources just doing that. I want to give the agent not the finished capability, but the ability to use my APIs dynamically in order to identify the styling. For
I
example,
completely agree,
of a
but
specific paragraph.
how would you? But why is it? What I'm missing is, like, you're very nice to the agent. You're very thoughtful. Like, this I can do for you. This I should not do for you. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This is just being rude. But what I'm saying is, again, goes back to my to my rule of thumb. Like, how would I treat a human? And I
Mhm.
think that this converse, if we would, like what you said now, replace the word agent and just was a programmer.
A very smart human. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, or not even a very smart. Like, again, I would. It's like GraphQL.
Mhm.
Um, it's very it's a very decent and nice API. So I'm I agree with you on that. I'm just saying, like, if you're just try being polite to the agent. Maybe the problem people are doing, maybe that's that they do not um they're not helping the agent. Maybe this is something that I realize now. We treat the agent as if it's like this omnipotent entity, and we're not helping it. And if we treat it like we would treat just a human behind the machine, we would get much better results. If you give me a book and you know the chapters and you give me through an API, why on earth would you just give me an API to the raw text? Why won't you give me the metadata that
Mhm.
says, okay, this is, and now we can talk about it. What's the good API? You have one query, we have a different query that gives you a list of chapters and a location. What's the location? Character. You split it. You put some placeholders, or maybe you say, listen, I don't need to give you an API. There's a format. You can read it here. I'm giving you the raw text. And each chapter begins with 5 asterisks, chapter 1, 5 asterisks, chapter 2. So you have to be descriptive. So like yeah, it's like that nice meme that you saw that the two robots holding a gun to a human, and one robot says, "Not him. He was always polite." And you go back 10 years, there's like a screenshot of someone working with GPT and says, "Great answer, thank you." He always said thank you, like not that one. So maybe that. So, but again, there's a let's not look 1 year ahead. Let's look 100 feet ahead. Time and distance
Yeah,
again.
and maybe that's a good opportunity as we kind of reach the hour mark to kind of talk a little bit about where this is going, um, and what are some current limitations that are going to go away. And for me, there are two things that I noticed. Uh, First of all, maybe just before I get into that, just to wrap up on the previous discussion, one other thing I didn't mention is my own experiments with MCP is that the agent was extremely smart about how to use the API. And
Mm,
if you ever had to do an integration process with different
mm,
systems, that did not exist. Like I had one API, it needed an environment ID. I had another API was giving lists of environments. I have another API. It actually used all of them and understood, just like an expert developer would, how to use them correctly. And there's a way to also specify to the through the MCP protocol describing your APIs. So I'm just saying this was a zero integration process to get max value, which is crazy. But the two limitations that I did want to mention that I hit are first, right now, and we were discussing this, I think, before, and I don't think it has quite changed. Um, while it is agent-centric, it is still, for the most of it, human initiated. So at a certain point, and
mm,
maybe you know differently, but at a certain point, a human asks the agent to do something rather than, and I'm contrasting that with either maybe CI initiated or process initiated, which I have not seen yet a lot of implement. Well, for sure, see a lot of these, but I haven't seen them yet. And a background kind of, as you mentioned, your pet friendly AI agent kind of being kept alive at all time, bored, taking care of all sorts of tasks all the time. So, whereas these have not yet manifested, what we right now are dealing with is mostly human triggered interactions that have a prompt behind them that kind of crystallizes a specific need or requirement, and this is what we
mm.
have to go on. And I'm absolutely certain that this will change, but curious to hear what do you think about that?
I'm thinking about example. I know there's a interesting company that switched. They're doing like a real estate management for short terms. Like they manage your Airbnb and stuff. Um, it's still human initiated, but not their human. It's like a B2B2C.
Yes.
If the guest complains, opened its Airbnb app, listen, something's wrong with the toilet. It goes to the agent, and if the agent feels it can take care of it, it just calls the plumber because it has the tools to call the plumber. Um, Again, we're going back to the autonomy versus automation. I keep forgetting that lovely word. Uh,
Automation.
automation. Put that like on the clickbait on the video automation. I love agents. That's what I've been doing for almost 2 years now. But I'm still a bit of I'm afraid. I'm not afraid like Terminator style. I'm afraid that credit card like whoa, listen, um I need to be next to you. Like it's like a kid. It's like a kid. There's a nice example. When I did that video I told you about Monday, I did an example. I'm taking a huge CSV file, and I said, listen, I don't know Monday. I don't know this file. I did like my boss asked me to create a board, do it for me. Something like, I think 10,000 rows, and I record the video. Everything's okay. When I felt like okay, I got the point, I just closed my browser, closed the video capture, I posted it, went to sleep. Next day when I wanted to do a different video, I was like, whoa, it kept running. Because it's just running on my server. It's not the browser. The browser is just me talking to the and and I didn't plan on that. And it happens with automation, but the thing is, it can do stuff that I did not ask.
Mhm.
Um, I've been experimenting, not even experimenting. I think it's a valid tool of agents that spawn new agents. Um, Back in the day, I did like I wanted to create a chess and checkers game, and it was like a first version, and you just see new tasks spawning. And I did a more controlled version where I say, this is what I need. These are the agents I need. Even there, it went a bit aside, but imagine it will just upload a new, and it's real. It's not science fiction. I did a video on it. If I take this entity, let's say I accidentally gave it the ability to download, install npm packages, and give it access to, execute system commands. That's it. That's all it needs. All it needs is to open my browser. So I agree we are going there, but we will have to see like new forms of security. By the way, the same that we do with employees in big corporations and even small businesses. The human factor is also a danger. There's a reason why when people get terminated, the places usually want them home. And 1 minute after they step out of the office, all their access was revoked. Why?
Mhm.
It's not a new human being, but the prompt has changed and it still has access, and you're not there. So again, treat it as a human, but that does not go to sleep. It doesn't have to pee. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't give up. Um, and that's scary because we have like biological checkpoints. We have biological checkpoints. We go to sleep. Okay, we can stay up early, 2 days. We'll go to sleep. Something will change. An AI agent can just go at it, go at it, go at it. And you see Cursor, when you work with Cursor, after 25 tool calls, if you noticed, they pause and they say, we reached the 25. Are you here? Do you want to continue? But imagine it can spawn a new task.
Mhm.
And you tell it, listen, when you reach 24, summarize what you did and continue. By the
But
way, you can do the same with GPT,
what
with
what you're
ChatGPT.
what you're describing kind of reminds me of kind of a weird daydream that I had where I was thinking about these different kind of personas that it's kind of like what you were describing, where we need also agents to worry about the security and of what the other
Agreed.
agents are doing. So suddenly
Agreed.
we have this zoo of different personas running around and kind of like a Sims game, right? And
Oh,
and
I'd
each
love
one
to
of
share a
them
video with you. Yeah.
and each one of them has a different role to play and a specific, like, not just a personality, but success criteria and different kind of um, adjustments as to how they do their job. So, for example, I would imagine a place where a lot of the workflow is automated. It's not just generating code and testing and executing and troubleshooting and getting customer support and doing the product management and thinking up new features. Each one of them requires kind of a different set of specifications, but it's very interesting to let them work autonomously together as a workflow, with the workflow itself kind of being adjusted to
Yeah,
maximize the output. The and
it's a new paradigm for
and
security.
what I hope that we'll be able to capture is also to overcome, and this is the second limitation that I was one that I mentioned before. I talked about the human initiated. The second limitation that I've hit and that I hope will go away is still in the pleaser personality of the agent. That
Hmm.
sometimes it's a great asset because it has this
Agreed.
can-do attitude. I can solve any task. And sometimes, no, there isn't useful data. Just tell me that you don't think there's anything, nothing to see here.
Ag-
And it's very hard to
Agreed.
get it to say
Agreed.
that. I know you and I collaborated on a project where we tried to do the same and kind of hit
Agreed.
the same walls. And when they kind of get that, and I keep thinking about where was it? Which a book was it where they had this really depressed robot? Was it the Hitchhiker's Guide? Where there was this robot that had like a depressive personality that was always thinking negatively. So when they do reach that stage, and
Yeah, yeah,
they managed to offset some of the passivity, sorry, of the pleaser personality around these agents, then I think that would also allow us to give it some more trust and think about kind of being able to offload things a little bit more
I,
painlessly.
I know we need to wrap it up. I want to end with a visual you reminded me of. You decide if you want to incorporate it in the video or not. But let me just show you this. This is an experiment I'm running. Do you see my screen? This
Oh
the
wow! Yeah.
video. So each one of these balls, it's an AI agent.
Oh my God!
Yeah, the blue ones are males. The which is meaningless, but I'll get it in the pink ones are females. Uh,
Very
the,
stereotypical.
yeah, yeah. The lines are the compute energy they have left, and they can scavenge for more compute, which is the plants.
Oh my God!
So you can see like you see them running, and they can mate and
Oh my
create
God!
new AI agents. And this is me trying to figure out like what society will grow, like what will happen. Will we see like one alpha male with many other and I gave them the ability also to share compute with each other. You have to be altruistic, or maybe it's not altruism. Maybe I'm making you dependent. Maybe
Okay,
I
Eran, like
created
you managed to scare me 2 years ago, and
ah
managed to scare me again today. I don't
yeah.
know
So
where this wild experiment is going,
I don't know.
and what kind of security measures you have around it.
I know I have the best security measure around it possible. My
Yeah.
credit card limit
Okay.
and my wife's observing eye on my credit card. Like, what the hell are you doing, you irresponsible person? So, and that no one can beat that security level. And then I have the banks are behind me. My
Not
wife,
yet.
I
Not
can
yet.
go wild. Not yet. Not yet. Yeah. So yeah,
Awesome.
just wanted to
Yeah,
share
this
this.
looks great. Let me know how the experiment ends and whether humanity managed to survive.
I'll give you a heads up when you need to run away.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Eran, for this
Thank you.
conversation.
It was
It's
a
always a
pleasure.
pleasure to talk to you, and especially around these topics. I'm super ecstatic about MCPs if it didn't kind of come through. I think it's going to change how we write software, which I wasn't as ecstatic about Gen AI in general, but this is something that affects, I think, me more personally as somebody who needs to think and design systems. And I think we all need to spend some time thinking about what do these agent-centric applications look like. Thank you so much. And
Thank
if
you.
any of you want to know more, I guess we'll include your LinkedIn profile that has some interesting posts that I've seen as well as a link to my LinkedIn and Twitter accounts. Perfect, guys.
Cool.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.